Today's episode was recorded in Tamarindo, Costa Rica on April 7th, 2026. Please be sure to check out our other episodes, including one with Sheila E. and Mexican neuroscientist Dr. Hugo Merchant. Don't forget to click subscribe and please rate the show on your podcast platform of choice.
Music came from the sounds of nature. You know, like birds are singing, the trees, when the rain is falling, they're making a special sound. Mm-hmm. You realize that the peace you feel in nature is related on the way your senses are interacting with nature. The same way you're stressed in the city. And so it really brings you down. And then also in my line of work, I have to identify those tangible but no tangible effects of nature.
Suena Stevie a mi alrededor. I just go to say I love you, mi amor. Vente conmigo que ya pasó el temblor. Quisiera darte en un segundo un universo de infinitas posibilidades. Todo aquí se vale, todo aquí se vale. Y vale tanto la vida para ir siempre tan deprisa. Cágate de risa. Todo aquí se vale, todo aquí se vale.
Welcome to Sing for Science, the show where musicians and scientists talk about music and science. I'm your host, Matt White. Each week we'll talk about a song by our guest artist and how it connects with our guest scientist's area of expertise. Today we'll be chatting with one of Costa Rica's most distinctive voices in music, Debi Nova. Debi is a Latin Grammy winner and Grammy nominee whose career is inextricably linked to her identity as a Costa Rican. Her latest album, Todo Puede Convertirse en Canción, or Everything Can Become a Song, suggests that even the noise of our daily lives can be transformed into meaning. That idea reappears in the opening track, 2020, a song about seeing the world with renewed clarity and finding harmony in the seemingly discordant. Also joining us is Costa Rican field biologist and senior Mesoamerica leader for Rewild, Esteban Brenes-Mora. Esteban's work focuses on rewilding, restoring ecosystems in ways that allow nature to regain its own balance and complexity. But just as importantly, his work models what it looks like for humans to be part of that system, not dominating it, but coexisting in a way that creates mutual benefit. The title of this week's episode on the podcast is Everything Can Become a Song, Listening for Harmony in the Costa Rican Wilderness. Hello, Debi and Esteban.
Hi.
Thank you for having us.
So, the part of the song that jumped out at me first, not just because it's sung in English, part of it anyway, is where you invoke Stevie Wonder. And the line is, I think you're saying that Stevie is playing all around me. Mm-hmm. And what struck me is that lyric tells me just as much about your state of mind, or what I can assume it is, as it does what you're listening to. Mm-hmm. And I got to thinking about how, like, it's mysterious but also intuitive. What is it about Stevie Wonder that has this, like, palliative effect on all of us?
When you said, can we talk a minute about Stevie Wonder, I was like, I don't know if a minute is going to be enough.
Yes.
Stevie Wonder for me is, inspiration, is comfort. I actually have one album, it's Music of My Mind, the Stevie Wonder album, Music of My Mind, that I listen to every time that I'm nervous. Like if I'm preparing for a big show or anything that makes me uneasy in my body, I listen to that album. And the answer is, I don't know why. Yeah. I don't know why. There is something that happens to me with certain chord changes and certain melodic lines on top of certain chord changes that create very particular sensations in my body. And Stevie Wonder is the king of that for me. I mean, it's something so special and so mysterious. Like you said, I don't think it has an explanation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is mysterious. And I think it crosses demographic, it crosses age group. I have 5 and 8-year-old daughters. Whenever they are being difficult or ill-tempered in the morning before school, if I put on songs in the key of life and don't draw attention to it, everybody chills out real quick.
I'm gonna try that.
You gotta do it.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's zoom out a little bit. What is the primary message of this song?
So 2020, which is 2020 vision, not 2020 the year.
Yeah.
Is the first song on the album, and as you say, my album is called Todo Puede Convertirse en Canción. Everything and anything can turn into a song. So for me, that song, when I was writing it, it was about leaving what doesn't serve me behind. It was about quieting the noise in my head and being present for what is, because I think the only way I can translate things into becoming a song is by being present. So it talks about reducing noise inside so that I can hear what's outside, like a Stevie Wonder song playing, or I don't know, it talks about laughter. It talks about other sounds and other emotions that I can only be conscious of when I have the space for it. So it was, in a sense, a declaration of wanting to be present.
I mean, we're listening to Birdsong right now.
Yeah.
On either end of that song, it sounds like maybe a voice memo.
Yes.
So where were you? Because you hear birds. Where were you?
I was actually here in Tamarindo.
Yeah.
And I wanted to start my album like that because that's the magic of a song. It happens out of nowhere, you know.
Yeah.
It happens in the middle of the air, you know. You're painting with air, and so I wanted to start my album tying it to the concept of anything and everything can turn into a song. I wanted to start it with a voice memo. It says a lot about, you know, where you are, that picture of time, the sound that's around you. Yeah.
So both of you, because of your visibility and stature in your respective fields, are kind of global ambassadors for this country. You both do a fair amount of traveling. And when you come back home, what are the sounds you hear that seem unmistakably Costa Rican, where you feel like you're home?
Well, you know, sometimes I live in a countryside, so for me, home sounds like birds, howler monkeys, many insects. So that's where I feel comfortable, despite me growing in the city. When I go back to San Jose or to any big city, I just feel like really trapped, like really not in my place. So coming back home and having all the cicadas and all the howlers is how I feel. Interestingly, people who stay at our house, they get awakened by the birds and the howlers. Mm-hmm. For me, that's just white noise. Mm-hmm. So going back home, I would say, is just a mixture of a landscape, and it really awakens curiosity of what's sounding and outside, and you know, there's a lot of questions to be asked when you start listening closer.
I was actually asking Esteban about this bird, how you call it in English. In Spanish, it's pecho amarillo, because I grew up going to a place called Punta Arenas in the Pacific, in the central Pacific coast of the country, and the pecho amarillo, that bird that we're hearing in the background, which we call
Kiskadi, great Kiskadi, yeah.
Great Kiskadi. It's like
Cristofué.
Cristofué.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Like, it was Jesus. They call it the Judas bird because it's telling on Jesus.
Oh, wow. But what did you just say?
Cristofué.
Oh, Cristo.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
It was the Christ, yeah.
Oh, wow.
But I remember that bird waking me up in the mornings and feeling really excited to be at the beach. So that, coupled with the sound of the ocean, definitely feels like home. But I've been really curious about what Costa Rica sounds like for the last 5 years musically, because it's a very big question that doesn't have a specific answer. And I read, coincidentally, in a book not long ago, that instead of having one identifiable genre of music, Costa Rica has diversity as its identity. And I thought that was really thinking
Yeah.
about this, what we were going to talk about today, I was like, isn't it so interesting that even in music, there is diversity, in one of the most biodiverse
Yeah.
countries in the world. So for years, as a Costa Rican musician, you're like, okay, where do I come from? What do I do? How do I represent Costa Rica in the world? And it's always been a big question mark in my head. And finally, I thankfully read this in a book, and I was like, oh, I feel at peace. We embrace diversity as our identity. So I thought it was really, really cool.
Yeah, and I feel like, Costa Rica music and science, I think are two careers that there's a lot of talent in both. Science and arts, and especially music, there's a lot of talent, but both are not as valued as they should be. So it's a challenge at the same time. We have a lot of diversity, we have a lot of talent, but we are at that point where we can take it to the next level just by paying attention and opening spaces and listening to those artists and those scientists that are emerging there.
I think Costa Rica, as an American, it's so famous for its dense concentration of biodiversity. So, what's to account for having such a rich representation of life in a relatively small space?
Oof, we can go for hours talking about why Costa Rica is so diverse. And I'll just start by our position. We were blessed by species from the north, species from the south. And then we have this mountain system right in the middle of the country that divide us in Caribbean and Pacific. You can climb some mountains in the Cordillera de Talamanca and you'll see the Caribbean, you turn around, you see the Pacific. But animals cannot go across that. So that has created microhabitats. We have a high percentage of biodiversity in relation to our small country. And then we have around our country little valleys with micro endemisms, which are places with unique traits and unique biodiversity there. And when we zoom out, we realize that our oceans are way larger than our terrestrial territory.
Yeah.
And we haven't even explored that much.
Yeah.
Recently they went really deep in the ocean and they came up with, I think, a bunch of new species of octopuses, and they found a place full of new life that it's still unknown to science. So we are known for being mega diverse, around 6% of world's biodiversity that we know, and yet we haven't explored what's down there. And I feel when Debi was mentioning the title of her album, I was thinking in my mind, everything can be science as well. Everything.
Yeah, of
and,
course.
and one of my professors, one of my mentors, Bernal, he used to tell me, whenever you run out of questions, go and talk to a 5-year-old kid. He or she will be asking the right questions about the environment. And then you realize, the little ant walking in the wall might have a lot of questions that can turn into a scientific process.
Wow.
So I really find that connection between the song and the record and the creative process behind science, I think.
That's amazing.
And in that context, full of biodiversity, I think it's just the way to do it. And I guess it works the same for music,
Yeah, curiosity for sure. Some kind of quest always, talk about mystery. Songwriting is such a mystery.
Right? Where's it come from?
Where does it come from? But I think I think it's life. I think it's that interconnectedness of whatever fuels this beautiful planet. I mean, it's all connected. Yeah.
Is nature a muse for you? Does that inspire your process?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know if it's such a direct, and plain thing to say, like, oh, I sit in front of the ocean and I write a song about the ocean. It's not that, but I do think that nature allows me to be present. It puts my nervous system in a place where I don't feel as distracted. Because I think at the end of the day, it's how we fit in the nature, yeah.
Well, it calls to mind, you sent me an article about the W.H.O. kind of releasing this data about the impact of time spent in nature, what it can have on our overall well-being, right?
Yeah. I think, music came from the sounds of nature. Like birds are singing, the trees, when the rain is falling, they're making a special sound. Mm-hmm. You realize that the peace you feel in nature is related on the way your senses are interacting with nature. The same way you're stressed in the city. And so it really brings you down. And then also in my line of work, I have to identify those tangible but not tangible effects of nature. Like we talk a lot about water coming from nature. We talk a lot about oxygen. But then we don't talk enough about pride of being in a place that's preserved. We do not talk enough about the joy of being surrounded by monkeys and then developing an identity around coming from a place that's mega diverse. Costa Ricans, they say we have a green DNA. I don't really believe that. I think we are just so exposed to nature that we have developed our identity around that. And I think that has to do a lot with how we feel, how well we feel, or how bad we feel, And sadly, we are losing nature in a lot of places. And what we have to understand is that if we lose nature, we're not only losing forests and species and water and oxygen and those essentials, but we're also losing the opportunity of feeling well. We're losing the opportunity of waking up to the sound of birds. And I think one of the toughest jobs to do in biodiversity conservation is increasing the identity and the sense of belonging and ownership people have over nature. And I think music, it's a great tool to achieve that. Mm-hmm. I feel like, we have all been sad or happy listening to a song, or we have been far away from home and we listen to a song and we go back. So the more we can connect music and art to nature, the more we can start rewilding our brains and then rewilding the planet. I think that's my goal, I guess.
Yeah, that's beautiful. As I was listening to you, I was thinking of when I moved to the States when I was 17 years old. And that was the moment when I realized that I came from a special place. Before then, I didn't realize that, going to Monteverde on a school field trip to study photosynthesis or whatever was actually really special, because you were in one of the most biodiverse places in the world.
You moved to LA?
I moved to Los Angeles, which is still,
It's mostly concrete, but you can see.
There's still some, air.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I moved and I started saying, I'm from Costa Rica, and started reminiscing and missing that I realized that I was from such a special place.
Don't you have a song that kind of resonates with what Esteban was talking about earlier about getting out of the city? Is there a song you have with Ciudad in the title?
My third album is called Gran Ciudad.
Okay. Yeah.
And I did it in Rio de Janeiro and in Los Angeles. So it's a big city. And funnily enough, I have recorded a lot of my music in big cities, but I think that has to do with the accessibility and resources that, now it's different. Now you can have a studio and record anywhere. Although my fifth album, because I'm on this quest of what Costa Rica sounds like, what are my musical roots? When my great-grandparents moved to Costa Rica, they moved to the Caribbean. The province is called Limon. And that's where my grandfather grew up, which is where the music comes from for me. My grandfather was a singer. So I decided to go to Puerto Viejo, which is in Limon, and set up a makeshift studio. And that's where I wrote most of the stuff for my fifth album. And again, I was a little frustrated at the end of it because I was like, this doesn't sound like Costa Rican music, but what is Costa Rican music, But I did record that in the Caribbean, and we have a lot of nature sounds in there. So in the Caribbean, the predominant music is calypso. It has a little bit of that too. Yeah, that exploration.
What I was thinking, I always fantasize of a world without nature. And now that you were saying, I recorded my records, you recorded your records in the city. Mm-hmm. And just picture, we run out of nature and then we put back humans, how do we reinvent music?
Without nature?
Without nature, that would be super hard, like without those sounds. And I think it's happening, like people are not really realizing the cultural loss we're having when we turn forests into cattle pastures and we completely mute the forest and we're eliminating all those benefits that nature is bringing.
I'm curious, how do you actually experiment for nature's impact on our health?
Yeah, well, I did with my students from the School of Public Health in the University of Costa Rica. We did a trial, and we were asking ourselves. There's Cerro de la Muerte in the highlands of Costa Rica. There's a community program protecting quetzals, which is one of the most beautiful birds on earth. Their habitat has been destroyed, and yet a group of people led by local leaders, they have been placing nesting sites and feeding sites and restoring the habitat. And we started asking questions with Danny and Jose, who were the students, about what's the well-being associated for those families who are part of a program. And the basic sense of belonging to a group that's trying to do something collectively for nature was already showing an impact over well-being. And then when you start linking that nature can be translated into financial improvements, like through ecotourism or through sustainable forestry or through having a better place where your land increases price or where you just feel more proud. So the way we measure that is through indicators that provide access to well-being, like how well my education level has increased since I'm part of this process, how well my access to health has increased, and overall how I feel when it comes to the place I live, with myself, with my family. So what we found is that even though they were not getting any direct benefits, financial benefits of hosting tourists or anything, the idea of belonging to a group and the idea of outsiders valuing what they were doing around nature increased the way they were feeling. And also, for those who were already and are already getting benefits from tourism, they have now to worry less about farming over hours, or they have to worry less to find extra money for education because they're already getting it from protecting nature. So there's a direct link on the way people protect nature and how preserved an ecosystem is and how well people live. In Guatemala, for example, I do work a lot in Guatemala. For me, it's probably one of the most shocking examples. There's a community-managed forests in Selva Maya on the east side, and on the west side, there's Laguna del Tigre National Park. So there's a protected area, supposedly with no people, so it's completely taken by cattle ranchers, and it's in a really critical shape. Whereas if you go where communities are taking care of the forest and managing and doing the patrolling and controlling the fires, you have a more preserved forest, and the ecosystem integrity, it's above the ones you find in non-managed protected forests. So I think the relationship goes both ways. If we have people linked to nature, nature will be better. Because right now it's hard to think of a pristine forest without people.
Yeah. Is Costa Rica having become this ecotourism destination? I would imagine that comes with some complexity, right? Like not everyone is totally down for the ecotourism cause, right?
Yeah, I mean, we realized a few years ago that our biodiversity and our nature was an attraction that could bring money into the country. So I think the challenge is, how do we preserve that, protect it, and let people come and see it and enjoy it and learn from it without destroying it? Because I think it's what I see. And going back to the Caribbean, when I went to record, the second time we went to the same place and came to the surprise that somebody was cutting those big, centenarios, like the big hundreds-year-old trees, to build a house. And it was so painful I had to leave. So that is definitely the challenge. How do we continue to expose people to the beauty and the benefits of nature without destroying it? I don't know what the answer to that is.
Yeah, and I think we should also look to what was before. Like to reach where we are right now, there were major changes. Protected areas were created where people were living already. So back in the 70s and even a little before, there was a big transition that required major sacrifices for some families. And at that moment, a lot of people were hesitant of the impact, the positive impact of that.
So 50 years ago, it was already becoming...
Well, there's some really emblematic national parks like Corcovado National Park, who just turned 50 years old last year. We can talk about Corcovado in the Osa Peninsula. It was people living on mining, cattle ranching, and agriculture there. But it was in the core of a peninsula that hosts a great percentage of the biodiversity of the world. So it was declared a protected area, and it required removing people. And that was really shocking. There was a lot of opposition. A lot of people were making jokes that it was not gonna work. Back in the 80s, there were cartoons of Costa Rica, like protecting monkeys, and completely broken in the financials, whereas other countries in Central America, they were going for the agribusiness as the main thing. Costa Rica was just slowly turning into a different direction, of course, with a cost on people. If you fast forward to today, a lot of the kids of those guys who were kicked out of that land, they have better incomes, they live a more relaxed life through ecotourism, and nature has been able to recover. There's still a lot of challenges because tourism is not for everyone.
Yeah.
And we cannot forget about our farmers, and that's where the coexistence element come in. How do we make sure that we can share the space and time with nature? Doesn't matter what we do. If we're a musician, if we're a farmer, if we are a driver, how do we find win-win situations between nature and us? And that's where Costa Rica is right now.
And I got the sense, because a lot of your work is focused on protecting tapirs.
Yeah.
And so they kind of are like they tell a larger story about the complexity of the relationship between animal, human, and habitat, yeah?
Yeah, I think, I can talk for like 6 hours.
What's a tapir?
Yeah, let's start with that. It's the largest mammal we have in the whole neotropics. So it weighs around 500 to 600 pounds. It looks like a rhino. It's related to the rhino, so it has a long trunk. Aside from elephants, they're the only animals that can have a muscular nose that they use as an arm. They pull down fruits and leaves. They're completely herbivores. And I have to say, they're super gentle. They're gentle giants in the forest. And they have been with us for millions of years, to the point that they have no wild predators. So they out-extincted the predators. They were close to be extinct, and by humans, of course. And
For what, food?
Food, mostly because of habitat loss. And that's why I always say the most powerful action any human can take to protect tropical nature is stop eating beef. Beef was the main reason why tapirs were going down. But tapirs also tells us a really nice story. In Costa Rica, tapirs have been slowly recovering, especially in those protected areas that were successful. And they have been coming out of those protected areas to the landscape where they are now sharing the space with humans. So if you are a tour guide, you're super excited to see a tapir. If you're a farmer, a cucumber farmer, you are not as excited. You might be scared because your whole income, meaning your access to food, education, housing, will be destroyed by a single animal in one night. That complexity around my favorite animal, that duality, requires a lot of creativity when you are talking to someone. Of course, I will never go to a farmer who just lost all of his income in a night to tell him that tapirs are endangered and they are the largest neotropical mammal.
Yeah, bring me my cucumbers back.
Yeah, he'll be like, it requires a lot of empathy, a lot of listening, and a lot of understanding that it's not only about the animal, but it's also about the relationship of that animal with the people.
But I mean, that's happened with all species, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like in our house, geckos, raccoons.
Yeah.
In the cities, raccoons, opossums. And, like what we're looking right now, like scientifically speaking, is that relationship. It's dynamic. It's not like Tom and Jerry, like 1,000 episodes of them chasing around. It's dynamic. One day we can be in a sweet spot that we are okay, but then an economic change might cause people going back to poaching, or an increase in the population might go to turn those animals into pests. So we have to be really observant on how these relationships are going through. And if you look in the past, like you used to hear that there were so many jaguars, they were all killed because they were killing the cows. Then jaguars went down in populations, then recovered again. And now we are all again dealing with the idea of conflict between cattle ranchers and jaguars. So it's not a linear thing. And that's, I guess, what brings that fusion between what Debi does, which is looking at the world and find creativity to build a song. I have to go look at the world, see a problem, and use my creativity to build a solution. And that's why, I always say music and conservation science, they're so close together.
But yours is like life and death. If I write a bad song, I might just get know what to listen to. But thank you. I appreciate what you're saying, but I think saving a species is so much more important.
But we can all take part, like I bet I can tweet, I love tapirs, we gotta love tapirs. And you tweet, I love tapirs, we gotta love tapirs. We can make a competition who has more impact, like in engaging people. And that's where
I will give you that. Music is a very powerful channel to communicate, to bring people together. We were talking about it before the episode, like when you are on stage and there's a lot of people.
12,000 at Debi's last concert.
12,000 people listening to you. You're like, wow, it's bigger than all of us. This is all of us together. So absolutely, if you can translate a good message into that mass, we're winning.
And before you guys were talking about how nature is a muse for music. Music for me was the muse to do what I do today. Like when you're a kid and you are in this square-minded world, probably full of religion, and you got to make money in your life, and that's all you have to do. And then you start listening to punk, and you're like, well, there's an alternative out there. And I don't have to follow all the rules. Being an outcast is okay. Also, punk is related to nature and being vegan, and so like a lot of conservation personalities, I bet they have been shaped by the music they listen to. So I feel there's a full circle between how arts and creativity in the shape of music reflects in people like us that do conservation science. And more broadly in a general audience. We Rewild as an organization, we go to Lollapalooza and some other music festivals. And it's so cool to see how people in a music festival, they go to where we are and they engage with nature and they engage about conservation. They even start asking questions on how can they help. Probably people that otherwise would never get close.
For me, music is a tool to open up your heart. It brings you in touch with your feelings. And I've seen that in myself. And when I play music with others, sometimes the most squared person in the room will break into tears when they hear a song. So it puts you in touch with your feelings and with your heart. And when that happens, that's magic. And when it happens at a mass scale, that's life. It's really something else. It's so beautiful. I have a question about tapirs. How long do they live?
What we know is that they can get up to 40 plus years in captivity. In the wild, they might go around 26 to 30 years.
Okay.
And like in the Tapir Valley where we live, there's Mamita who's around 18 to 22 years old. And you can see her age now. So we're really sad to see
Is she slowing down?
Yeah, she's skinny. She's pregnant right now, but you know, it's sad to see her go. And she's been super healthy. So we believe they live around 25 years. They are super productive when it comes to babies. If you let them, if they have the right resources, they have one baby every 18 to 16 months.
One baby, that's it.
One baby, and they take care of it.
And are they communicative with humans? Like, are they?
Oh yeah, I have you can call me crazy with this story I'm gonna say, but so Mamita gave birth to Gaia 17th of March 2024. Gaia recently turned 2 years old. And Donald and I, who's the owner of Tapir Valley, we've been tracking Mamita and following her. And the day she gave birth, we realized, and we went looking in the forest for Mamita, and we found her like 2 or 3 hours after she just gave birth. So you have these little watermelon, they call them watermelons because they have stripes, the babies, and dots. And Donald and I, Mamita really knows us, especially Donald. She knows the smell of Donald and the voice of Donald. So we stand in front. The baby was still wet, trying to look around. And then Mamita looked super tired, you know, giving birth, not feeding probably in 2 days, not drinking water like in 2 days. When she smelled us, she came closer to us, sniffed us, then went back to the baby, and literally she pushed the baby in front of us.
Como take him?
Yeah, and
I need to rest.
Donald and I, we were like shaking and crying.
So I guess it's across the species. Like, please help me.
You know, it's hard to explain. And she just left. Probably she went for food and like spa time. And then half an hour later, she came back and she was like, hey, now give me my baby back.
Oh my God.
And we left. And Donald and I, we were all, you know, like, what was this? Like, what just happened? No one's going to believe this.
That's so beautiful.
It was beautiful, yeah. So I do believe animals, they do more and do feel more than we actually give them credit for.
I mean, I'm completely connected to my dog. She knows everything about me. Yeah. Have you ever played music for the tapirs?
We have never played music for the tapirs. No, I think the tapirs are, you know, they don't see well, so they rely a lot on their listening, and on their smell and their touch. So I had the fantasy of a punk band called the Dantas when I was a teenager, and you know the personality there looked like
What's that mean?
Dantas are tapirs. I don't know how to say that in English very well.
Both are okay, tapir and tapirs, but Danta is the name in Spanish. But you know, they're like, I had a book that were like the weirdest and ugliest animals of the world, and the tapir was there. So you know, they were pretty punk.
Okay.
But I think they would react to music because they really rely on listening. They have whistles. So my brother's a musician, and he made a song with
one of the
whistles of the tapirs.
What, he sampled it or something?
Yeah, I had some recordings from my camera traps.
I can't resist. I need to know, why do they prefer to defecate in water?
That's a good question. We don't even know for sure, but there's a couple of theories. They do latrines. So they gather all together to poop, not at the same time, but in the same place. So if you see a tapir pile of poop, you're gonna see many around.
But it's not in water?
Some of them are in water. And the reason why they do it in water and why they do it all together, they're related. Some people hypothesize that they do it to avoid predation. So if I go and poop here, and all my fellow tapirs are pooping here, predators will be confused on where else to look. And same in water. I poop in water, it'll be washed down. And
I mean, that's why I do it. But.
Yeah, like you don't want to. You want to hide.
Yeah.
You don't want to be found. But yeah, it's a big question, and you know, the more you start digging into the poop, you start solving more questions, and you know, they have a lot of seeds, so they're called the gardeners of the forest. So losing tapirs means no forest restoration.
Wow.
And no carbon sequestration, no access to water. So there's a cascade effect, and many trees rely on them. So we are studying this special tree that's called a jicarodonto, that if we lose tapirs, we completely lose this tree as well. So there's a lot of connections.
Which tree?
Jicarodanto. It's an endemic tree from Guanacaste, from the mountains of
Es el
Guanacaste.
de los jícaros, no.
It's in the same family of the jicaros,
Okay.
but it looks like a cucumber.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So it's unique to certain areas of Guanacaste mountain range. In Rewild, we released a video last Lollapalooza, I think, relating how an orchestra or how a band works when they're playing all together. If you remove the bass from a song, the sound is no longer that impactful.
Dramatically different.
Yeah, and if you remove the drums, it will change everything. If you remove the melody, and nature is not different from that. You know, like if we start removing pieces, the song will not sound the same, and meaning that those services will not be the same. And that's why, you know, every species matter, every ecosystem matter. You know, that connection between sounds of music and nature functioning, that analogy is so pure.
Yeah, well, also a big lesson for us as humans, right? I remember the first time I went to the rainforest as a teenager. It was explained how in the rainforest everything has a purpose. It's a big whole, and every piece is a piece of that whole, and every dead tree is necessary for the other trees to live. And the diversity is actually what makes it strong. If we as humans were to learn from that and know that what makes us strong is our diversity and the things that make us special, we would be a much better planet.
Yeah, I think that, you know, just going out there and paying attention. I think we've been so distracted that we don't pay attention enough to nature, you know, like and when I say nature is not being in tropical forest in the middle of Costa Rica, I say being in a park in a city. You know, nature is out there, and if we start paying attention, you start seeing all those tiny interactions that I totally agree. You know, like everything is doing something different, and they all work together. And you know, like when I was starting to study biology, I was really disappointed when I heard someone saying like, oh, some things might not have a reason or a function, they just exist. And I still argue is we haven't figured out what's their function. Yes. We don't have to be that sober. We haven't figured out what they're doing. And we might find out until we lose them. And we don't want to be in that scenario. I'd rather not knowing than losing them and realizing. And same happens with diversity in humans. I believe the joy that brings diversity in every single aspect should be replicated everywhere.
The joy, and also it makes the whole better. It makes the whole stronger.
And you know, something I learned from nature, and we can learn a lot from the success story of recovery of Costa Rica's forest, is that it's easier. In that complexity, simplicity, it's present. You know, like, and in a way that we might think that nature will never recover from a fire. If you give it time and the right pieces are together, a cattle pasture can be turned into a forest in 20 years. Probably one of the most amazing things I've seen, it's in the Tapir Valley. You know, Donald bought that property when it was a cattle pasture. He wanted to go birding there. That was the reason. He started rewilding it and then paying attention to the sounds and to the birds. And 4 years ago, we were able to discover one species of frog that only lives there. That he listened to it and he paid attention to nature and he realized that song he had never heard before. And he went into the water, looked for the frog, pull it out, and said like, oh, I don't know what's this.
Wow.
And he started looking for scientists, but scientists were not accepting that that was possible. And until we came together, and I don't know much about frogs. And my ignorance was a blessing there because I told him, I don't know, but I believe you. And we started the process of describing an endemic frog. But, you know, it has everything, you know, like it was a song. It was a song that really called his attention and turned it into a new species that he has been protecting without knowing. So that's something we don't want to lose. We don't want to lose those songs that we haven't heard yet. I always wonder what would happen if the Clash would still playing here. Which songs we missed from the Clash?
As you were talking, for me, it's like, it's the same with music. I mean, when there's devastation and oppression, that's when creators tend to write the most amount of songs. That's when it becomes really prolific. It's almost like these little frogs appearing. It's like all these songs sprouting. So definitely, I think life always persists.
Yeah.
And what you were just saying, and it's kind of invites a good opportunity, because I need to credit you with the idea for this episode, pointing out to me the overlap between what you do and what you see in your work with the lyrics to Debi's song. So I'd like to finish by just hearing what you have to say about where you see that resonance between what Debi's singing about.
Well, you know, I started listening a lot this week, and one of the things that I felt
It's not punk music.
I know, I know. I have to say that my most listened artist last year was Olivia Rodrigo. So, so I'm in between, you know.
Okay, good.
But you know, you just said it. You know, like it's what I felt there is that relation with what I do is the relationship of standing up again and finding the freedom you're looking for. And I think that's nature. You know, like one of the most beautiful things we find in nature are light gaps. You just said it. A tree falls down. Everyone's concerned about the tree dying, but then there's thousands of seedlings saying, yes, there's light. There's an opportunity for growing up. And I think that's reflected in your music, like that idea of life happens, life goes on, and then turning those moments into a beautiful thing.
That's so beautiful. To me, the emotions that are very rich in terms of how they can translate into song is those feelings that they're not finite. It's bittersweet. It's in between. it's the sadness of death, but also the rejoicing and the rewilding. And I hadn't thought about this before, but the chord progression of 2020 has that a little bit, because it goes from major, minor, major, minor. It has that thing that not that I'm comparing myself to Stevie Wonder.
I'll say it. It's not my song, but it has that same feeling.
But it's got that in between, or that surprise factor.
Exactly.
From the major to the minor. And
that's exactly what it is. I'm just going to put in this little footnote. Some scientists call that novelty. And the effect that novelty has on the brain, they found in stroke victims who can't enjoy release of dopamine and serotonin that we get from exercising. They're finding they can exercise the brain with music, and specifically music that contains that component of novelty, that unexpected. Like it dilates the pupils, it releases more oxygenated blood into the brain.
That's amazing. I didn't do it consciously, but I don't think music or nature does anything because it thinks about it. I just think it does it because it feels right, right?
Yeah, or it what works, you know, like evolution works like that.
Yeah.
It made me survive, it made me persist, and I think emotions are quite the same,
Well, you guys have been tremendous guests. This is my first Central American interview.
Pretty cool.
The next one, we're definitely going to meet the
Mamita.
Las Dantas, Mamita and Gaia.
Yes. Please.
They're pretty famous. You'll see them all over the place. Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
No, you're more than invited. And, you know, I come from a musician family, and I struggle with not being, you know, like, damn it, I have like cousins that are way cooler. My brother's way cooler.
I think Debi and I probably both disagree.
I'm like, you just babysat a baby, a recién nacido, una danta recién nacida.
Yeah, it's a different kind of...
I don't know who's cooler, man.
But, you know, the synergy between music and science and conservation, it really kind of brings that undone things in my life, can fulfill that. So I really appreciate being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Debi.
Thank
It was amazing.
Igualmente, gracias.
Be sure to check out Debi's latest album, Todo Puede Convertirse and Canción, and stay tuned for upcoming releases by visiting her website, debinova.com, and following her on social media at Debi Nova. You can learn more about Esteban's work by checking out his page on the Rewild site, rewild.org/team/Esteban-Brenes-Mora. Sing for Science is co-produced by Talkhouse and made possible in part by a grant from the Simons Foundation. Our music is by Panoram. Video editor and social media director is Bailey Constas. Location camera and sound by Thomas Poole at Botanica Films, and our digital producer is Keenan Cush. If you like Sing for Science, the best way you can support us is to give us a review, tell a friend about the show, and subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. For more information, please visit singforscience.org and follow us on social media at Sing for Science. Thanks for listening.
Mm-hmm.